We're going to get started. So this is what I learned my first year as a full-time programmer. And I want to reiterate something that I think Evan said on the first day, which is if you kind of realize throughout the talk that this isn't what you were expecting or you're just not getting a lot out of it, that's totally fine. Feel free to just like duck out and check out another session because there's so many great things going on right now. So a little bit about me first. Hello. I'm Hilary Stohs Krause. I work for 10 Forward Consulting. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin. And we build Rails web and mobile applications, primarily for startups, but really for a lot of different kinds of businesses. I tweet a lot. If you don't like cats or puns, maybe follow someone else. There's a lot of that. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is that programmers are not the most important people in tech. And I think this was a lesson that took me a while to learn because when we think about like how tech is portrayed in media, right? Like you have your hackers like banging at keyboards and you have like the Windows screensaver stuff going on and somehow that's like coding. And and there's just this very elevated sense of the coder as like the person in tech, right? And so when I came into tech as a programmer, that was really kind of the mentality that I had absorbed. It's not true, and I hope you appreciate this lovely graphic that I made. So yeah, basically all of that's nonsense, and we should forget this whole concept of like the rockstar, ninja, 10x programmer because it's not real. It doesn't exist. We're gonna look at why. They're bad for business. They literally cost more money. Harvard Business Review did this big study on these sort of superstar workers, right? And I don't think it was specific to tech. It was across a variety of industries, but this idea of like the uber productive worker and what was the impact that they had on the company and on the bottom line. And they found that they cost you money. And why is this? They're overconfident. And when you're overconfident, you're much more prone to making mistakes. The more likely to break the rules. And sometimes being able to see past standards or rules can allow you to innovate, but a lot of times those rules are in place for a reason. And if you're breaking them without communication, without a purpose, then you're actually just causing more harm. And sure, they're more productive, they're turning out more code, they're pushing more often, but it's not as good of work. Because if you're not taking the time to do the work well, then you're gonna end up with shoddy code. And then finally, and perhaps the worst part, the way that they interact in the office is infectious in a bad way, right? So they have been shown to bring down morale across the board. They make everyone around them miserable, and therefore they're lowering the productivity of everybody else, and so even if they have higher productivity, it's actually a net loss. So, if being this sort of like, Christ-like figure in coding is not what we want, what do we want? Don't go rogue, right? Collaboration is going to get you a lot farther than just venturing off on your own and trying to take control of things and do it the way that you want to do it. Slow and steady. This is not a race, right? This came up again in one of the keynotes, right? The idea of like everyone's like, ship fast, ship quickly, ship now. But if we take a second to kind of pause, really think about what we're doing, why we're doing, what is the problem we're solving, we're going to have a much better product in the end. And then again, like I said, fostering a collaborative work environment with your coworkers instead of trying to compete against them to see who can like curry favor with the boss or get the most code pushed out. So this is from that study that I mentioned from the Harvard Business Review, and I love this. It's basically taking, if you take one of your superstar workers and you turn them into an average person, you're actually creating more value than if you replace an average person with a superstar, which I think goes against a lot of what we hear and what we might think is sort of obvious on the surface. Part of the reason for this, right, this idea that like getting rid of that toxic person creates more value is because programmers aren't the only people, right? We're not islands. There's a lot of different roles that go into tech, even if, whether you're working in a tech department at a sort of like non-tech company, or whether you're working in a product company or a consulting company, there are a ton of different people that make something a success, right? So we have QA, project manager, product manager, data architect, and not everyone has all of these roles, but all companies are going to have some of these roles. And these all have to come together, right, for us to be successful. So knowing this, what I found really valuable in my career, and I should say I've been a full-time developer for 4 years now, what I found really valuable is seizing the opportunities to learn where I am from people around me, including non-coders. So for example, finding who writes the clearest documentation. Maybe that's someone in QA, maybe that's a programmer, maybe that's a project manager. Who leaves the best feedback on pull requests and on code reviews? Who finds the most tests, right? Figuring out who around you is an expert at what they're doing and learning from that person about that specific slice of what you really admire about what they're doing so that you can in turn really pull the best practices for your own work. Another thing I want to talk about is that there are a lot of ways to contribute, right? When you first start out in tech, especially if you don't have a computer science degree, maybe you went to boot camp, maybe you're self-taught, it seems like you're just dead weight, right? Like imposter syndrome, right? Everyone is doing more than you are. But there are a lot of different ways that you can bring value besides just writing lines of code. So again, documentation. This was a thing that one of our junior developers in particular really spearheaded. We had like no documentation, we were a pretty small company, and it was kind of this idea of like, well, we all know everything about every project, so we don't really need to write it down, you can just ask someone. And she came along and she was like, this is a very flawed system. I don't know anything, and it makes it really hard for me to get started and really can feel like I'm contributing. And so she started to do a lot of our documentation, beefing up our READMEs, all of that, which has been great. It's helped everyone. Pairing on code reviews, right? So maybe someone needs code looked at and you're not really sure what's going on, or it's a language you haven't worked with a lot, or a framework you haven't used, but just sitting next to them and having them explain to you, sort of serving as like an in-person rubber ducky for them, can catch a lot of bugs or mistakes. Doing research, figuring out what is the next thing we should be using, why should we use it, and then presenting that to everyone to kind of help in that way. And then testing, because we always need more testing, right? I feel like any place I've worked, QA always has more to do than they have time. And you really can't do too much testing. So, talking about some kind of like serious stuff today. So I threw in some fun Rails methods throughout to kind of like lighten the mood a little bit. And this is probably one of my favorites, not necessarily for what it does, but just because it's Squish. Has anyone used Squish? Cool, I don't see any hands. Could be the blinding lights. So Squish just takes a like multi-line string and makes it one line. That's all it does. But I love getting to write, like type Squish into code. So that's my first one. All right, we are not our users. Who's heard that before? Yes, excellent, lots of hands. So this is one that I think too is maybe more inherent to those of us who are from underrepresented groups in tech, but there still are groups you are not a member of that you are probably writing tech for. And so I think this is something that is just super important to keep at the forefront. I've got some examples I want to go through quick. So who here has a hyphen or an apostrophe in their name at all? Right, no one? Thank you, I'm not alone. Okay, well, for those of you who don't have one, it's very obnoxious being a person with a hyphenated name on the internet. I saw a great talk from Erin O'Neill a few years ago, and she started out her talk with just one slide that said, "The internet hates the Irish," because she has an apostrophe in her name. And so, for example, no form thinks that my name is real. Like this third one actually says, "Please enter a valid textual response." And I read that and I'm like, yeah, it's funny. It's kind of annoying sometimes. Like I've been at sites where I can't check out because it just gives me this random error message and it doesn't even tell me it's because of my name and I have to figure it out. And then it's like, okay, or signing into flights. I've had issues where my global like entry name I can't remember if I think it does have the hyphen, but sometimes flight software strips out hyphens. And so then it wouldn't match my global entry, and so I couldn't check into my flight, and they wanted me to pay $100 to change my name to match my global entry. It was just a nightmare. But I see this, and it says to me, like, I don't matter, right? Like my name, which for a lot of us, your name carries a lot, with your sense of self. It has a lot of personal meaning and like historic meaning. And to me, this says like, we don't care about you at all, and we think your name is fake. And you have to change because we're too lazy to write software that can accept hyphens, right? This is such an easy thing to fix. Okay, who here is a woman? Yay. So y'all know there are tons of things with software that are terrible if you're a woman, right? Like vocal recognition software that literally could not hear women's voices, right? Okay, who here is not white? Yes. Okay, y'all also know, right? I don't need to tell you. This is terrible stuff, right? And this is software, has been in the news a lot because this is software that people are looking to use for criminal justice. These are horrible things that are happening because people are forgetting that we're not our user, right? So that's great, right? You're probably thinking, I've heard a lot about this, I get it, there have been talks about it here, which is awesome, but like, what am I supposed to do about it? Diverse staff is one, right? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. User testing, so getting it in the hands of real people. All it would take is me to fill out a form once to be able to tell someone, hey, this doesn't accept hyphens, like we should fix that. Cross-cultural checklist, this is something that I really like. So I have a cross-cultural checklist with names from different cultures around the world for this same reason, right? So we can test, do we accept apostrophes? Do we accept if there's more than one, what we would consider last name? Do we cut off the length of names if you have a really long name? Do we take names with accents, right? And so all I have to do is like plug that in, run a few tests, and it'll tell me, hey, all of these names failed, like go fix it. Device labs, 10 Forward has a device lab. I get made fun of a lot at work. They actually made a Slack emoji for me because I have an iPhone SE. It's a little tiny one. I buy it refurbished because I like a small phone and I don't want to change, and I'm going to hold on to it as long as I can. But I've caught bugs on our products, or I've caught responsive issues on our websites because I have a smaller phone than anyone else in the office, except for Fred, who also has a small phone. And I feel like it's really valuable because I know it's very frustrating. It's not that old of a phone, right? It's not that old. There are so many people that are using way older phones, way smaller phones. Most of us have access to much better technology than perhaps the average person, certainly than a lot of our users. And so just having a small phone around the office so you can just pull things up, it doesn't take long and it can really solve a lot of headaches for a lot of people. And then accessibility testing, which is a huge one that I would venture to say none of us are doing nearly enough of, myself included. Localization is another big one. A current product I'm working on is used globally, and we're doing a lot more with internationalization and localization than I've ever done before, and it's been a really great learning experience, and it's so much easier to implement that if you're doing it from the beginning. Right, fun Rails method number 2, pluralize. Do people know pluralize? Yeah, more people. This one is used all the time. I think it was really recently I had a colleague who wrote a method to basically do this, and they were newer to Rails, and they were so excited, and they're like, look, and I figured out for these cases, and you can just put one in if if it doesn't fit the standard pattern for making something plural, and I was just like, that's great. Or you could just use pluralize. So that's a fun one. All right, number 3, you will never know everything. You won't. There's always going to be someone who knows more than you do. And that's okay, right? We can work with that. Everybody familiar with the concept of rubber duckying? Nods, yeah. I love explaining this to some of the students that I tutor who haven't heard of it because I'm like, oh, well, you just rubber ducky it, and they give you that blank look like, wow, you've clearly didn't eat breakfast and maybe need to get more sleep. But it really is true that just saying something out loud changes how we perceive it, right? We talked about that earlier with doing paired code review. So even if you don't feel confident in doing a review of the code yourself, just serving as a sounding board for the person who wrote it is really valuable. So if we're feeling frustrated, we're feeling like we don't know what we're doing, we're never going to finish our assignment, the code is too hard. How do we snap out of that? How would we break out of that mentality? Reframing our feelings is a big one, and this is something that I learned while researching this talk, and I really love this idea. There was a psychotherapist, Dr. Lori Nadal, and she says that frustration isn't an emotion like anger or sadness or joy. It's and I'm going to quote this, it's a distorted cognitive response to a presupposition that we are entitled to get what we want in a particular moment. So when I think about this in terms of coding, it's the idea that when we're frustrated, it's because we feel like we deserve to understand. And we do deserve to understand. But there's no reason we should know something we don't know already, right? There's so much that we're learning, especially in the first year. You're just learning all the time. And this, when you're frustrated, it's like because you feel like it should be easier, right? Or you feel like you should just get it. And that's just being way too hard on yourself. It's perfectly normal that you don't understand something. I don't understand something all the time. I'm constantly bugging one of our senior developers, like literally like wheeling my chair over and just like poking him like, hey, what is this nonsense? So really just working to like recognize that frustration, figure out where is that coming from, and just kind of reframing it as, okay, this is an opportunity to learn, right? Or maybe this is hard, but the other thing that I did earlier like was a breeze, right? I already learned how to do that. So just kind of reframing how we're thinking about those that act of being frustrated. Going for a walk. So studies have shown that if you go for even like a 5-10 minute walk, even indoors, like you can be on a treadmill indoors, but just the act of like walking and moving clears your head and makes you more creative immediately afterwards. So taking a short walk will actually like literally make you think better. Switching to paper. So other studies have shown that students, when they're taking notes on their laptops in class versus writing things down, they retain the information better and they have a deeper understanding of it when they're writing with pen and paper than when they're typing on their laptop. So there are times when I just like literally shove my computer to the side, pull out a piece of paper and a Sharpie, and I just write down what I'm trying to do. Or I draw it out into a graph form. And it's amazing how that can really clear your brain. Cleaning or rearranging your desk. Right? It's so easy to get distracted by things that are in your work area. Or maybe it's doing the dishes if you have a kitchen in your office. Or maybe it's cleaning out the fridge. Just something that again, like you take a break, you clear out the space, you complete something concrete, and then you come back and you have more of a sense of accomplishment. And I think it helps us feel like we have more space to just kind of like bang our heads and work through something. And then helping somebody else. So this has also shown that like, it's again that idea of accomplishment. So when we're frustrated, when we feel stuck, it seems like we're not getting anything done. And so even if it's something completely unrelated to what you are trying to do, helping someone else, that active altruism, improves our mood, makes those synapses fire better. It just like allows us to reapproach something in a better frame of mind. If you can't figure it out after doing all of that, which will definitely happen a lot, and that's fine, right? Because we don't know everything. Then that's when you can go back to those internal resources we talked about, right? So if you're working on documentation and you don't know how to describe something, go find that person. If you're trying to write tests, who writes the most tests and the best tests? Go find them. There are ways to ask for help that are more productive for both parties, and so I want to talk a little bit about that now. So first, what are you trying to do, right? There's a lot of times that folks will post in our Slack and they'll say, hey, this thing isn't working. What am I doing wrong? It's like, well, what are you trying to do, right? Give me some context. What's the big picture? What are you trying to do here? Because maybe you don't even need to mess with whatever you're trying to mess with, right? Maybe you're trying to write a method when you can just use pluralize. So what are you trying to do? What have you already tried? It's not helpful for you if I just tell you, oh, do this thing or do that thing. And you're like, I tried that already. Tell me that up front, right? Make it easy for me to help you. What might work that you haven't tried, right? Maybe you went to Stack Overflow and you saw like, oh, this looks interesting. Like maybe I could try this solution, but you're a little nervous because maybe it involves a database migration or it touches a part of code base that you haven't really worked with a lot before. So you have an idea of what might work, but you're not sure you want to try it on your own. And then lastly, how can I help you, right? Do you want me to come sit next to you and parent it together? Do you just want to be pointed in the right direction? Do you want to know if option A or option B is better? What exactly are you looking for from me, and how can I give you the best help? And one of the other senior developers at 10Forward, we wrote a guide for all of our juniors with a lot of these steps. So if you're interested, that's right up there. And then another thing to remember is, even though you don't know everything, and you never will, you know a lot more today than you did even yesterday, right? Especially being at this conference. I'm sure everybody has learned stuff while they've been here that they didn't know before. And that's awesome. But it's easy to focus on what you don't know rather than acknowledging what you do. So I want to talk about how we can do that. So track and celebrate your growth. This is a huge one. Keep a journal, right? I have a Word doc that I just keep open. I mean, I'm a big tab person. I think I have like 122 tabs open at any given time on average. I'm that one. But one of those tabs is just a Word doc. And any time that I figure out something that was new to me or that felt really hard, or I get a really good comment on a code review, or someone posts in Slack, oh, thanks, Hilary was such a big help with XYZ. I just screenshot it or I copy it and I put it in that doc. And then when I'm having those times that I'm really frustrated, I feel like everyone knows more than I do and I'm a fraud and why are they even paying me? I go and I look back at that doc and I just kind of read through it for a minute. And it reminds me that, yeah, you have had success. You are doing things right. Like you are contributing, you have value. This is just a bump of the road. This too shall pass. And also, it's really handy when it comes around to asking for a raise or a promotion, because you basically have like an evidence journal of everything that you're doing right and bringing to the company. And I definitely got my last raise because I just sort of printed that out and like put it in front of my boss. Document your successes in a more public way if you're comfortable, right? Does your company have a blog? Do you have a personal blog? I like to do a lot of like really short posts on a thing that seems like it should be easy but wasn't for me for whatever reason. So adding a copy to clipboard button to your website, or making a text input field that shrinks and grows dynamically as you type into it. And that not only helps me to understand what I just did better, but also it's like a public record of like, oh yeah, I figured out a thing. See that? I figured that out. That was me. Tutoring or mentoring, right? Nothing helps you realize how much you've learned more than teaching it to somebody else. And so that's a great way if there are any boot camps in your area or a community college or anything where you can kind of just like lend your voice and help people. It's a great way to realize how much you've learned that you didn't know before and that you don't realize that you've learned. Speaking of local meetup, this one's a little scary for some people. Totally get it. But I will say, as someone who helps run like 3 meetups, we always need speakers. And lightning talks, like we're doing here at RailsConf, those are a great way to kind of get your feet wet. It's not a huge commitment. It's 5 minutes. You can do 3 if you want. You don't have to take the whole 5. And that's, again, another way to really acknowledge your work and also just like kind of own your expertise, right? Like acknowledge in a public way, like, yes, I know things and I can do things, and it feels really good if you're into that kind of thing. I know some people don't like speak. It's totally fine. All right, fun Rails method number 3. Previous changes. This is actually one that I just learned recently. Who's used this one before? Just a couple people. So this one returns a hash of attributes from a model that were changed before you saved it. So if you save something and you're like, oh, I totally didn't mean to do that, you can call this on that model and you can see exactly what the data was before you saved it, which is pretty sweet. All right, this is my favorite, I think. If you like wearing dresses to work, then do it, even if everyone else is in t-shirts. So when you're in a new environment, I think especially, again, if you're from an underrepresented group, in whatever way, there's this desire to kind of fit in, right? And like some code switching is just inevitable. It's just a part of being in the society we live in. But I think it's important to try and bring your authentic self to work when you can. And so I realized that after I'd been at my company about 3 months, I was the first technical woman on the team. And I was wearing t-shirts like every day, and I only own like 10 t-shirts. So I was just kind of like cycling through those really, really fast. And it was because, and it wasn't a conscious decision. It's not like I pulled my t-shirts out from the back of the closet and like put them down and was like, I'm only wearing these. It happened gradually, and it was because everyone else I was around, for the most part, was wearing t-shirts. And I realized it one day when I went to some kind of networking event or something, and I like dressed up and put on like a sundress, and I was just like, I felt so much better wearing that. And so I decided that then, I was going to be much more conscious about doing things because I wanted to and not just because it was easier or like made me feel like I fit in more with the sort of paradigm of programmer that I saw around me. So this is now my personal office style. It says sophisticated with a hint of slutty. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? The differences that you have. So for example, I have a small phone, right? Or I have a hyphen in my name, or I'm a woman. Like all of these differences can make you feel like you stand out, right? Or like you don't belong. But they're also a source of strength. So your voice matters, right? This is something that I think is really important, especially for those of us, again, who maybe don't have a CS degree or come from a group that is not very represented in tech. I think it's really important to remember that your voice matters. And so we should use it. So how do we use it, right? Because that can be a little scary, especially again if you're like the only of something in your office, right? It can feel really daunting to speak up. And again, I think there were some other talks that have talked about this idea too, like how do you use your voice? And so look for things that could be improved and offer a way to improve them. So it could be something like the office culture and the environment, like, hey, maybe we should be composting, right? That's something that feels a little less scary. It's a little less controversial. You can start small, kind of build your way up. Is there anything with the development process, like especially as a newer dev, right? Like in my office, I said we had all been working together for a while. We kind of had a system. We didn't really think about what it would be like for someone new coming into the process. And then we had someone come in who was like, hey, I think we could really fix some things here because it's very difficult to just like break into this sort of monolith because nothing's written down. And it was just, yeah, that's a great idea. And we've really tried to build documentation more into our processes now, but it took someone, raising their hand and saying, hey, this could be better. Documentation, right? Bonding activities are when your team is having like a team celebration night, is it always pizza and video games? Or conversely, is it always like soup and crafts or something? I don't know. Actually sounds really fun. Whatever it is, like if there's something that you think that would be fun or different to do, like just suggest it, right? Again, this seems like more of a safe way to kind of like test the water. Are people going to listen to me? Do they care what I have to say? And try it out. Workspace arrangement even, right? Like maybe we should have all of QA sitting together, or maybe we should break QA up. There's a lot of different ways that you can use your experience and your perspective to improve the office in ways that are not necessarily related directly to coding, right? Company swag, this is a big one. Some of my, we got t-shirts a couple years ago at 10 Forward, and I should say 10 Forward is now 70% women, and I think we're 30% people of color. But again, I was like the first woman hired, and we got t-shirts, and we got two different colors of t-shirts. We got blue, and we got like a dark gray. And I don't know about y'all, but I have enough dark gray t-shirts. Like I wanted the blue. I was really excited. It was this very pretty blue. We didn't get the blue in fitted style. We got the gray in fitted and straight cut. We only got the blue in like traditional men's cut. And I was not happy about that. And I told someone that I was not happy about that. And so then the next time we got t-shirts, I should have worn it today, I didn't think about it. But we actually got t-shirts that I'd been wanting to get for a while that said 10FW Girl Gang, and it had like, yeah, they're really cute. And we had like an artist do like a design of like Rosie the Riveter, but it's like coding, and they're really cute. And it was just like, I said something, my company heard, we pivoted, and it got better. But I had to say something because I was literally the only one on the team who cared about the fact that we didn't have fitted shirts. So if I didn't say something, it probably wasn't going to change. And I know that it can be scary. And like in all of these situations, right, you only do what you feel you can do safely that's not going to jeopardize your job, right? But that kind of leads on to another point I want to make. Make it easy to say yes. So this actually I learned at RailsConf a couple years ago. It was a talk about remote work and has really stuck with me. Make it easy to say yes. So how do we do that? Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't have anything written down for that slide, so I'm just going to talk about it. It kind of goes back to that, like, how do we ask for help, right? Like, if you just post in Slack, like, I'm stuck, you're probably not going to get a lot of feedback. But if you say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, it's for this client or this part of the product. Here's what I've already tried. Here's a link to like my branch on GitHub. Like, can someone help me do X, Y, Z? I need this done by Thursday because we promised that it would be done to QA or whatever. I am much more likely to be like, oh yeah, totally. Okay, I'll check it out after lunch. Let's schedule some time to pair. Here's a good resource in the meantime. So really like thinking about how can I cover all of my bases so that someone feels like a real jerk if they say no to what I'm asking. This is like literally my life motto, and it's made everything so much better. It does require more work on your part, and there are times where you should not have to convince someone of something that feels very self-evident. But again, the world we live in, at least right now, and if you do get what you think is important, then that helps to move that needle a little bit. If, however, you're at a company where you're doing all of these things, you're putting in the extra effort, and you're still hearing no, right? You're still getting shot down, you still feel like your contributions are not being valued, people are not listening to you, your voice does not matter to the company where you're working, then maybe pull out a map and start exploring other options. Because you shouldn't put up with bullshit, right? We work in an industry where there are 80,000 projected unfilled tech jobs just in the US through 2022. That's a lot of people who want to hire and cannot hire because there are not enough people. And that also means that there is opportunity for you. Now, of course, this is dependent on a lot of things, right? Like, if you have a family, it can be harder to move. If you are a caregiver, if you have health concerns, right? There are a lot of things that make it hard for us to move from job to job. But I feel like just given the supply and demand issues within tech, it's easier than a lot, and that's a good thing to keep in mind. Working remotely is also an option, right? Maybe you can't move for a number of reasons, but tons of companies are hiring remotely. So maybe consider that if you feel like where you're working now is not supporting you. And then again, this idea like every company is a tech company, right? So maybe you're working for the hot new tech startup and it sucks. Go work for like the office supply company and like build, work on their like internal inventory system or something, right? Like maybe it's not fun, but maybe they'll at least treat you like a human being, and that cannot be overvalued. And then, especially for like those of us, again, who come from underrepresented communities, so I mentor students at the YWCA in Madison runs a boot camp, and I get asked a lot like, how do I ask about diversity in interviews? And there are lots of studies that show that if people of a majority of the company advocate for someone in a minority, they're seen as like a good citizen, right? They get points for that from management. Whereas if you're part of a non-majority group, even if you're advocating for a different non-majority group, right, you're seen as a troublemaker. That scores against you, which sucks. So that's a thing. But also there are a lot of companies that like there's been a lot of attention paid to companies who aren't diverse. So a lot of companies want to have diversity. They maybe don't all want it for the same reasons or the right reasons, but I do feel like, at least as a white woman, that plays to my advantage to a certain extent, because there are companies who are only interviewing a bunch of dudes, so if I come in the door, I'm more recognizable, I'm more rememberable, and when you're able, use that to your advantage, right? But do be wary of tokenism, because it doesn't do any good to get a new job just to find out it's the same as your shitty old last job, right? All right, last fun Rails method. Find or create by. Who's used this one? A lot of people, yeah. I think I might replace this one because I feel like that one's really common, but it's so useful. I use it all the time. And this is just if you're not sure that a record exists, like say you have a user trying to create an account, right? So you don't want to create a duplicate one. So you can use this method, and if it doesn't find the user based on the criteria that you pass in, then it creates a new one. Otherwise, it just returns the existing one. So really useful. That's kind of all I have. I just want to say, like, for all of the folks that are newer in programming or new to the tech industry, like, you got this, right? You're going to be great. You're going to succeed. Especially this conference is a great way to meet people who want to help you succeed and who will be those supporters instead of just allies, right? Or instead of just mentors. So go find them and make use of them, because we all want you here. I got some citations that you can check out. My slides are available. There's been a link everywhere, but it's also right here. I have stickers. I have Guinan stickers if anyone's into Star Trek. I'm on Twitter. You can email me. You can come talk to me. And that's all I have. So thank you.